Hello everyone, and welcome to GreatLakes-TCG's YouTube channel. Once again, it's been a long time. My name's Godin, or Jeff. It's been about a month and a half, I think, since my last post. It's actually the Nationals post, but I finally was able to play One Piece again this last weekend. I was in the Treasure Cup. I ended up going X-2. I got 25th with none other than Shanks. It's the same concept that I took to Nationals, but we've actually improved on it. And by we, I mean Quan kind of took, the helm here, and he made some suggestions, and I think we all agree. So without further ado, I'm going to get to the matchups of the deck and why I think Shanks is the definitive best way to play Shanks, especially going into OP10 specifically, especially with potential bans on the horizon. So I didn't put the percentages here like last time. I'm going to go over them right now against Doffy, and I'll show you the deck list right after this, but let me show you why I like this. Against Doffy, I think the deck is favored at least 55-45, if not 60-40. Doffy actually has to hit an insanely high roll to get advantage on top of us, which is actually interesting to say that I have a deck that actually beats the best deck in the meta, in the format. Lucci's a harder percentage for us to win. I would say that's about 40-60 Lucci favored, but Lucci is very inconsistent as a deck. I don't know why people still play it when it's so inconsistent. You have to have a really good day for you to do well. I know all the best Lucci players that I personally know and work with have given up on the deck, so to speak. So I thankfully didn't even see any Lucci this weekend. A couple of my friends saw one or two, and they were able to actually get it against them, even though it's an unfavored matchup. For BY Luffy, I think whoever goes second is more favored in this matchup. But specifically, if we go second, we're about 60-40. If they go second, they're about 70-30. So actually, they have a more favored going second curve against us. But we'll go into the details later. Against Blackbeard, this is one of the best ways to, best reasons to play this deck, and why I think it's going to be really strong depending on the ban list, especially in OP10. It doesn't matter if you go first or second. You are so insanely favored to Blackbeard, they cannot keep up. Your animals spawn animals from the deck. You're not losing any resources from the hand to put out multiple bodies. And you're able to be very aggressive. Then if you see a dragon into a Shanks, it's kind of just over. Just those rush bodies alone are enough to kind of push you like over the hump, so to speak. Also, we have a lot of the one cost blocker toppers. You'll see in a second. Those actually come into play very, very significantly against the Blackbeard matchup. And so finally, or against Purple Luffy. Now, this is the reason why, like I mentioned in my last video, that this deck even exists. Purple Luffy is a deck that I'm very well versed in, and we think Shanks, because the Zoo package is so strong, that we are actually favored in the Purple Luffy going first or second, but we want to go first. In the mirror, unfortunately, this doesn't really, the Zoo package isn't really that relevant in the mirror. It's all about the top end. So we're playing the standard control Shanks version, essentially, where we just play for our top end. You want to go second because the first person to put a Shanks on the board and resolve it typically is favored. Granted, if you're seeing the same amount of high roll, right? Our deck doesn't have a Uta Searcher. Some Shanks decks do, some don't. If you are running an Uta Searcher, you are more likely to find a top end piece. So I would say they are more favored in that aspect. But really, if you go second, you find a Shanks, you kind of win. Nami. Now, another reason why the Zoo package is so good, it actually does not auto lose to Nami. It allows you to spawn multiple bodies on the board very quickly, ping 5 or 6 a lot of times early game to get more aggression on board, and then by the time you're hitting your 8 and 10 dawn turns, you're able to chain Dragon into Shanks and basically take over the game. So Nami is not that unfavored for us. And now, once again, playing the Sanji and the Zoo package allows you to go wide and be more aggressive into an L. So it's not all about do I see more top end or do they see more Raigo type picture. And finally, against Bonnie, I think this deck, just like the control deck, we both obliterate it. Now, just getting into the deck list real quick. So here is the version that went X-1 that got 11th. This is Quan's version. My version's just a 2-card different. 3 cards different. So Quan's version, actually, he says he likes to go first rather than second. My version prefers to go second, but it depends on the matchup. The reason why he likes to go first is because he's playing the 9-cost Newgate, which I am as well, but he's also playing on 4 Beckman in multiple of these Tony choppers, and he just likes to go, you know, chopper into Rayleigh blocker and go from there. So there's a few cards that you could notice are not in here. So for instance, a lot of people are asking us, why are we not playing, you know, Robson? Or why are we not playing the Monkey and the Bach Punch? Or why are we not playing the Summon Chopper? Or even more, why are we not playing the Shut Up and Come With Us event, this 1-cost event? To explain it best, in this meta, because of Doflamingo, and this is why this deck is going to be very different but very strong if Doflamingo gets hurt with the ban list. Because of Doflamingo, we cannot afford to play so many bricks or so many cards that don't give us enough value. And so what we found out is over multiple sessions of testing that this card ended up being a brick in hand in the late game, especially because if we're playing Shanks, it's very hard for us to leave up Dawn. If we're playing Rayleigh and we have a Red Hawk in hand, I don't want to leave up Dawn for this thing. You could play it as a one-of because it can combo with Whitebeard. We weren't on this before, and actually I could show you guys the list we were on going into Nationals. So this was our list at Nationals, or my list. The difference is we were on this chopper. We were still on, you know, some Nami, some Sanji, but not nearly as much. The top end ratios seem to be roughly the same, but taking out this chopper has given us a lot of room to solidify what the deck wants to do. And what we found out is this deck actually works best as a control deck. This deck is, once again, a control deck, not an aggro deck, because Doflamingo exists. If Doflamingo is not in the meta, I would say this card has merit of coming back, and we can shift this deck to be more aggressive to match whatever the meta is. And being more aggressive would even further shit on Blackbeards and all those 4-life leaders like Usopp and stuff. This card would allow us to be very aggressive into them. Now, one other card. So why are we not playing the Robsons, or why are we not playing more animals? The reason being is, once again, this deck is mostly a control deck. The animals are there in the beginning to act as a distraction or a way to they're either a distraction for majority matchups, or they're your premier goal for some matchups. So against Purple Luffy, the animals are very, very strong because they don't put out a lot of pressure for the first 3 turns. So if you're able to spawn multiple animal bodies, those things aren't going away. Because the way Purple Luffy plays, even if he's on perfect curve, your animals, you'll have 4 animals on board by the time he puts out Luffy Taro and swings 5 plus swings 6 or 5 with whatever he played on 4, if he played something on 4, that is. Sometimes they don't have that. So typically we just overwhelm Purple Luffy with the sheer amount of bodies, and then as our animals are taking all the heat and playing the game, we start to draw into our top end, and then we transition from animals to the top end, put down the Rayleigh, put down the Shanks, and then really just win the game from there. But once again, or against Blackbeard, the animals are definitely the core of the deck, especially because most Blackbeards are not expecting it, and so they won't turn off our ability or on plays by 3 or 4 dawn. So we're able to put this guy out, sneak out a body, attack the next turn, sneak out another body. And if they want to answer this, Blackbeard's actually terrible at being dawn efficient with removal. He's either going to pay 4 dawn to remove 1 body. Just once again, this is a 3-cost body that spawns out another body for free. He's going to lose a card out of hand, not develop a board, and pay 4 to use an event, either like Liberation or Finger Pistol, to kill one of our bodies. And, or he's going to have a dot Q to put down, then he has to play like a Stronger to decrease, or a Laboon to decrease that. And once again, that's only getting rid of one body. But Stronger's like a minus card in hand, and if he puts out the Laboon doesn't really do much into our deck later in the game. So it's like a lose-lose scenario, like no matter what. Like he's putting out multiple cards in hand to get rid of a 3-cost body. It's terrible. It's a terrible trade for him. And especially because that body spawned out likely 2 more bodies by the time they're getting rid of it. So that's why the animal package just obliterates Blackbeard. Now, moving forward, this is a control deck. That's why we play the Beckman, that's why we play the Rayleigh, that's why we're playing the Shanks. The Tony Chopper, this blocker, we use it to swing, and we use its ability very often. It's not really a blocker, it's mostly a swinger, because we kill power of things, and we're able to combo that with, say, our Beckmans or our Rayleighs on their respective turns to really remove bigger bodies. That said, this is the deck list. What changes would I make? So my version was a little bit different. Where is it? So this was my version. As you can see, the bigger difference is I'm on 2 blocker choppers, 2 ace, only 3 of the 0 costs, and I'm running 3 dragon instead of 2 dragon. And then I have 1 less Beckman. My philosophy is that I think ace fixes our worst matchups, or what was our worst matchups, like Lucci. So if I'm able to establish an ace on board against Lucci, my win rate against that deck is like 70 plus, no matter what. For some reason, I don't know why, I can't put into words, but ace just completely destroys Lucci. So this is why I added him. He's also really good into a Nell, which could sometimes be a problem for the deck if they draw well and you don't. So this combination of ace and dragon just really does well into a majority of matchups that want to be removal heavy. He also can't be bounced against Doffy, so there's reasons to play him. He's also another 5 cost, because our 5 cost or 6 Dawn turn isn't that powerful if I don't already have choppers on board to put Dawn on and swing with. So typically that power goes away, especially because sometimes blocker really won't have his effect available by 5 Dawn turn. So that's why. Now, going over to the matchup. So let me go here. So starting with Doflamingo. The deck, so the optimal curve is deck preference. Why? Because Quan's version, he says he likes to go first against Doflamingo. My version, I like to go second. I play this matchup, and I think we both play the matchup with Mini Starve, where we don't attack Doffy's face, at least until like our 7 Dawn turn at minimum, where we're starting to, so we try to control board, we attack board aggressively, we play out, our optimal curve would be like 3 cost chopper, swing 6, 5 cost Rayleigh, swing 6, hopefully we get the ability off with this, 7 cost Beckman or 8 cost Rayleigh, depending on your first or second. And then you could either, because he plays the 9 beard, so we could go 9 beard or a Shanks and a Rayleigh. It doesn't really matter, your top end, your 10 Dawn or 9 Dawn turn. But essentially speaking, this is kind of the curve that Quan likes. He thinks that as long as Doffy doesn't open, like Doffy going second is a lot more passive, because turn 1 they're putting on a searcher, turn 2 they're usually playing Jinbei plus something else, and they're swinging 5 with leader, unless they play Boa, then they're able to play 6. But at the same time, Quan believes that being able to contain Doffy until his 6th Dawn turn, before he even tries to take life from you, allows you to keep a healthier hand, build board more aggressively, and allows you to position yourself, like say you're playing Beckman and then you already have a chopper or 2 on board, so it's really hard for him to deal with your board. Even if he goes Jinbei into Law, bounces back the searcher, bounces back one of your choppers, that only leaves him with 2 5Ks on board. Essentially speaking, that's the way Quan likes to play it. My way is I'd rather just, how do I say it? I'd rather be able to swing into everything and force him to get cards out of hand, so I aggressively attack his board. So when I'm going second, typically he always has something rested for me to attack into, even if it's a 6k. A lot of times my 4 Dawn turns are load up 4 onto lead, swing 9 into their 6 or 9 into their 5, if I have nothing better to play. And I just force them to give me 2 cards out of hand, or just remove, or they just don't have a board anymore. So that's the way I like to play it. The reason being is I like being able to play Rayleigh on 8 and then Shanks on 10, or just double Rayleigh. So once again, we both mini starve. We both, establish a board and play the same cards. In the end, it's really just about preference. That's why Quan's on 4 Beckman, because he prefers going first. In this matchup, the animals are a distraction. Don't defend them unless you... it depends on your hand, obviously. Like, say you're on your 4 Dawn turn, you have animals out, and he attacks into the animals, and you have nothing to play on your 6 Dawn turn. Your 6 Dawn turn is going to be just a bunch of you swinging animals into into other cards and just getting cards out of the Doffy's hand. Then, if they're only on 3 or 4 cards in hand by then, because they've played Teach or something, I think sometimes it is worth saving the animals. But a majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's not. A swing into the animal is not a swing at face. So that allows you to get into your late game more safely, and then we usually get that's when we start getting the advantage. The duck is really good here because if we're starving Doffy, you could if you summon duck with chopper, you could easily just swing the duck, bounce it back to hand at the end of your turn. You don't have to attach any Dawn to it, or you can, it doesn't really matter, and just go from there. Also, with Rayleigh minusing 2 or minusing 3 or minusing 2 the things, and with your blocker chopper minusing 3 or minusing 2, sometimes your duck swings in and as a 3k to a 3k, and it's just very efficient swings there. Now Lucci, once again, this is a harder matchup for us, but I believe going second is better, mostly because Jack is more of an annoyance for us than Moria, surprisingly. The reason being is if we aren't able to answer Jack, he gets a lot of value for Lucci, more so than you might think, mostly because we play such a low end to the ground animal squad, and typically if they don't have like a Lucci early, then Jack's kind of what their answer is, and also lets them cycle into their Morias and into their like removal spells. But so Lucci's very slow and reactive, so once again, you could either high roll with animals if they don't see a Lucci early, or you can just, you do want to take the first 2 life for free without, like, even if they swing 5 at you, take it. You want to go down to 2 or 3 life against them because they're not going to aggro you down. You know, Lucci does not aggro anything. So, and sometimes I've even gone to 1 life if they really want to swing into my life, and that would put them, it puts them in a mindset, oh, he's only at 1 life, let me just swing big. But I have a giant hand, and I'm able to basically make him waste his Dawn swinging big at me, and then I can like win on the crack pack. A lot of times you'll be playing like, it depends on what you draw. Sometimes you're playing the animal packet trying to go really aggressive at face. Sometimes you're playing more of a, hey, I'm gonna go for board, make sure he has no board to kill me with, and complete it. It depends on what he has in trash, obviously. Sometimes I ignore things because I don't want to put him in trash from to replay them. But typically it'll come down to us sticking like a big body. So like that's why Ace is so good into Dragon, into Shanks, because it gives you a lot of, Ace gives you sticking power, Dragon gives you rush, especially if they play like as a response to their Jack, because if they're playing Jack, typically they don't have a blocker out because of how aggressive we are. So Dragon into Shanks would be amazing. BY Luffy. So this is a deck that I faced 4 times this last Treasure Cup. So actually I'm gonna go over like a Treasure Cup video later. This is just a deck guide for this video, like for this deck. But for BY Luffy specifically, you are favored if you go second. If you can get a 10 cost down that sticks so that it's not getting Rygoed, you basically kind of win. Also, the reason why this deck is better than Control Shanks is control Shanks win rate into BY is very low if you end up going first. And this deck it's also worse going first, don't get me wrong. But if your animals are hitting, there is a way sometimes where, like say if you have like 2 3-cost choppers in hand, so you could just like chopper into chopper and get 5 bodies on board by turn 3. There is a way where you can actually be aggressive into them and then finish them off with dragon into, like, so say if you like chopper dragon like Shanks as your hand, you could easily be very, or even if there's a Beckman too in there, you could easily be super aggressive, push them down to 0, force them to self-awaken, and then use your bigger bodies to really push their face in. Typically they lose a lot of cards in hand if you do it this way. This deck is very skill dependent though. I would say you have to know how BY plays, you have to know how they're going to react, and before you decide to swing or not, because typically if you have 4 swingers and you swing 5 and they have 2 life, they're going to counter. But so you don't want to swing something that could be vulnerable, or you swing expecting them, let them pitch 1 card and then you just stop swinging. So it's like a more of a back and forth, kind of like an L. I didn't actually fill out this part by accident. Oops. Optimal curve. Really, it's establish blockers and starve them, establish blockers until you hit your 7, 8, 9, 10 dawn turns. Then it's like you could play Beckmans to get rid of Sabos, or punch Luffys that haven't activated for some reason, or even Rocket Luffys that are just waiting on the board. You can use them to get rid of Kuzans, so Beckman's really nice there. You can also, sometimes I save a Beckman or 2 in hand to get rid of a Sabo when I'm going for game and I've already established a Shanks on board. Dragon's phenomenal. That's why I love playing 3 dragon in this deck. It lets you swing like 9/9 if you're on 10 dawn with leader and dragon alone, or if you have like a Beckman on board, you go like 9/11, and that's really, really strong there. Especially against BY Luffy when they're like, you're trying to really tax their hand. Finally, Shanks, amazing card there. It makes their swing so much less potent. Usually they're just swinging 11 with leader, and then outside of that it's a Moria 8 and then a punch Luffy 7. Like, it's not even that aggressive, so typically you're able to counter out of all their attacks and be super healthy. You do want to counter out of the early attacks if you can. If he's swinging 8 at you, obviously you just take, but if he goes first and whatnot. But if they're just swinging 5s and 6s or 7s, go ahead and give him 1 card if you can use leader ability in like a 2K. But make sure you keep enough counter to defend your board, because sometimes they'll shift gears and start swinging at your board when they know they're going to die the next turn. So make sure you take enough life to have cards to defend if you don't have blockers established. Purple Luffy. This is the whole reason why this deck was made. We are favored into Purple Luffy, whereas Control Shanks is not as favored. Well, I guess it's more dice roll dependent. But even then, I personally think Purple Luffy is favored into Shanks, just even the Control version. But the Zoo package kind of obliterates them. Actually, it's really, really good into Purple Luffy. They can't handle the aggression well. Once again, they're kind of weak early on, despite them taking, like, they take their life to ramp and put out bigger bodies, but those bodies can't swing until the next turn. So typically by the time they're swinging, you might have a 5 character wide board swinging 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and Purple Luffy really can't keep up with that. It's kind of like what Doffy does to Purple Luffy, and sometimes they just aren't able to keep up. This is one of the only matchups where it may be worth to defend your animals, depending on your situation and game state. Mostly because if you know their hand size is at 3 or 4 cards and they are down to 1 or 2 life, and you can really push tax them next turn with 3 or 4 swings, then it's worth it. It's worth it to try to defend your animals to make that push the next turn. And Quan was actually on stream against Purple Luffy, and he went down to 1 card in hand, mostly, and he whiffed 2 animal searches. By the way, he put down the chopper on play, whiffed the search. When attacking, whiffed the search. So like the animal package wasn't even firing for him, and it was still like he said he won with 3 or 4 life. It wasn't even an issue for him. So I will say though, if they do hit their optimal curve, even with Shanks on board, it'll be a little hard to remove their board because of Gum Giant. So you have to really play, like, see how many cards he has in hand and play with the thought that, okay, I either have to swing, you know, 4 over every, like, any character I want to kill, or I just have to just go face and see, you know, because swinging against the 5k is much easier than swinging against the 7k or 8k. Blackbeard, once again, I said this is close eyes because it doesn't matter if you go first or second. We are very, very strong and favored into Blackbeard. We have rush cards. Our on plays are usually live, like the choppers, because he doesn't really use his ability that early, and if he does, it's kind of a detriment to him. He will use his leader ability usually on 7+ Dawn, so we can usually get wide enough and attack them, put down your blockers, put down your 2Ks, because your 2Ks are swingers in this deck, almost all of them, even the Sanji. The Sanji is really, really strong. Typically, if you see 2 rush cards, like a dragon into a Shanks, you usually win the game. It's really hard for them to keep up with that aggression, even if the dragon's on play is off. And even if they see 2 of their 10 beards, usually we win. I prefer going second, I think, but I know Blackbeards prefer to go first, so I haven't really explored going first for second aggressively with this matchup because it's just so dominant in my favor. We don't even get to 10 Dawn usually. Usually I'm just winning by like 7, 8, 9. Now, Shanks Mirror. Kind of already talked about this. This isn't really much different. You want to go second, you want to drop an 8-cost dragon into a 10-cost Shanks. It's really, really strong in this matchup. After you're able to do that, if you could drop 2 blockers, you kind of just win. Typically, whoever drops the first 10-cost Shanks does win the game, but you know, there's scenarios in between. If you do get stuck playing the going first curve, there are some things you can do. The biggest thing with the animal package that the control package doesn't have is that you can be very aggressive if your animal package is firing. And so you're actually able to aggress that. You could swing, you know, 5, 6, 6, 6, 5, 5, 5, like a bunch, and really, and Shanks is actually really bad at removing early game, you know, small attack things, because I don't think most of them are not playing the 5-cost Marco anymore. So it's just Lucky Roo, and if you want to waste a Lucky Roo, a 4-cost Lucky Roo blocker for one of my 3-cost chopper swings, by all means, go ahead. So once again, you want to be really aggressive, and if you try to stay healthy early, usually you'll win out late. And that's enough for the slideshow. So that's everything. If there's any specific matchups you have questions about, please ask them in the comments. One thing I do want to share with you before we go is bringing up the scenario. So I was X-2. I should be X-1 for this match. This is round 7 or 8. I was undefeated until now. I think this is round 7 or 8. I was XO until this round. And I think it's 7. And so you can't really see my board state, but this is against the Blue Doffy. I'm at, I believe, 1 life. And I have like 4 cards in hand. And he has 2 cards on board. I have multiple swingers. I think I have like a Shanks, a Rayleigh, a Dragon on board, right? Or a Beckman. The issue here was this. I could try going for a game, but he has 4 cards in hand. So I'm like, I don't know if it's even in a blocker. So even if I were to play my Rush Dragon in hand and try to go for game, I might not get there. So I thought that was a little risky. I had a 5-cost Rayleigh in hand, and so I could play 5-cost Rayleigh, pitch the dragon that I was going to play anyway, the brick in my hand, draw 2 more potential counters in my hand, and if I drew 2 more counters, even if he split 10-10, there was no way I lose. So I could swing into this board, I could swing a couple into life, and there was 0 chance I lose if I just go 10-10. If he goes 10-10 or even 9-11, it doesn't matter, right? I was able to guard out of 11 if I did that. And I had a blocker on. I would have had a blocker established. He would have to remove the blocker with it. Unfortunately, by some brain fart or just me punting the game away, I swung into his board before playing the Rayleigh. So I put down a 1-cost counter. Yes, it was a blocker, or a 1k counter. Yes, it was a blocker, but I put it down and I wasn't able to draw off of it and cycle my hand. And what I would have drawn into is 2-2Ks. I'm not even lying. I checked. I might have the footage here, but I would have drawn into 2-2Ks. But because I was thinking so far ahead, I didn't even realize the order of operations here, because I'm so used to attacking before putting things down, especially when I'm attacking life. And I could have just attacked life and I would have been fine, because if he gave me the boa to block at any point, and then I could have attacked into Weevil later, but it doesn't matter. Like I should have just put down the blocker, draw my counter first. But by some brain fart, I attacked Weevil first and then put down the Rayleigh, and I didn't even realize I couldn't draw until after. I'm like, oh my god, I just made the biggest mistake ever. And so I ended up losing. It's my own fault. He had no way of winning if I put down that Rayleigh and drew the other 2Ks, because I only lost by, I think, 1K in the end anyway. Like, I lost by 1K counter in the end anyway. And so just one of those 2K cards would have gotten me there. Just one. So it was so cooked. He didn't have Perfume Femur in hand either, so it's not like he could have, and I had 1 life, so it's like Perfume would have even helped, because I just give the blocker no matter what. Either way, that's that. Thank you for watching. I will also be doing a video with Quan, kind of going over Shanks a little bit, and obviously he could talk about why we came to our conclusions, but I went over that a little bit earlier in the game. There are some nuances, or some, it's still not the most consistent deck, but Shanks, even the regular control Shanks, even with running Uta, is not the most consistent deck. So I still think this is the best way to play Shanks right now, and I still think that even in OP10, especially if Doffy gets nerfed, and we'll talk about this more in the other video, I think Shanks is insanely strong with the rest of the decks that are coming out and what's left of the meta if Doffy's gone, because then we could change the deck around where I don't have to play the Red Hawks anymore. We might not have to be so aggressive with Rayleigh. There's other ways, because the Zoo package already beats Purple Luffy, so we could actually lean more into the aggression Zoo package and just leave this altogether. Either way, till next time, thank you guys for watching.